Yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning, gentlemen on the dais. No ladies yet, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to speak here and exchange some ideas with you. Coming from a small, rather small country, half the population of UP, but biggest economy in Europe, I think, and second biggest exporter. And all this you know. What maybe you don't know is that 99.7% of our enterprises are small and medium enterprises, and that they contribute something like half of GDP, half of nearly 40% of turnover, and 70% of the jobs. So that's, say, the profile of that small country. And I'll take your permission to talk about software in a different form, the software behind the MSME cluster development. What we do is we promote international cooperation which contributes to what we call sustainable development throughout the world. And throughout the world, that's everything on that slide that's not white. So anything from orange to yellow, that's the countries we work in. So one major contribution we can make is to foster, to promote, to help global learning, to help the exchange of experiences and good practice, and always brought that into focus from a German perspective. Means coming from a country that has tamed the tiger of capitalism in its own way. We call it social and ecological market economy. We rely on quite a strong state in this interplay between the private sector and government, and also on a lot of cooperative mechanisms between government and the private sector. Here in India, we are happy to work on a fundament, on a basis of a lot of common values and common interests. If you take the 11th five-year plan of India, the key phrase from our perspective is accelerating the pace of growth while at the same time also making it more inclusive. The priority areas of our work in India, therefore, are corresponding to the priorities of the government of India. And in our case, it's energy, it's environment, and it's what we call sustainable economic development. And that, the latter, is the area I would be working in. In our projects, and together with our partners, what we try to do is to build knowledge-based capacities for sustainable development. And that means we work on three different levels. We work at the level of how you design systems, how you organize them. We work at the level of how you test innovations, develop and test innovations, and then how you roll them out into the bigger system. And this is a very big system. So the challenge to come from a pilot to a big rollout is a very big challenge. And our inputs typically are knowledge inputs, advisory services on the system design level. Then we go to the pilot implementation and we assume also responsibility there. And we try to capacity build the intermediaries that at the end will do the rollout. Permit me two slides about key concepts because they might have some contribution to what we are discussing. General, some, and specific to private sector promotion, others. One key concept for us is that we are not the helicopter guys. We are not the ones that come, fly in, and then only are talking about policies, but we are also not the ones that get lost somewhere in a cluster. So we are constantly taking the elevator. It's the elevator approach, as we call it, from micro level, from the enterprise level to the policy level and back. And as you can see here, it's not only 2 levels here, it's 4. The meso level, the level in between the policies and the enterprises, that's maybe the battleground that is most interesting to what we are discussing here. And the other one was mentioned in the morning also, the whole question of the meta level, the question of culture, the question, for example, bringing hundreds of millions of people from the rural areas, from a rural life into an industrial life, that changes also values, and that is a level also to look on. The other one is, for quite some years, we are not just advising, we are also assuming co-responsibility for implementation, so it's a rather hands-on approach. And then something we learned in the 1990s, you should look at systems as they are complex, but then you have to come up with interventions that are simple. In the 1990s, we understood that systems are complex, but then we tried to react by turning all the screws of the system at the same time. And that we couldn't manage. So the good news is that you don't have to manage it either. So if you go to, say, the law of the minimum from the people in the agricultural sector, plant nutrition, a plant knows how to grow. It needs a lot of nutrients, but in any place, in any time, there's only one nutrient that is the bottleneck of its growth. And if you find out that bottleneck, you focus on that bottleneck, you have a very, say, sharp and focused intervention, and the system will take care of its own growth. Coming to rather specific concepts, business and investment climate. We all talk about it. When we talk about it, we mean it in a broader sense. So it's not only about improving the legal framework, the political and institutional framework, it's all the access questions for the enterprises. Access to loans and other financial services, access to land and property, access to productive infrastructure, water, energy, telecom, transport. My colleagues here would talk about that, I suppose. Access to qualified labor, it has been mentioned in the inaugural session. Access to business know-how, to BDS, to technology, also that has been mentioned. Just one thing, these were 6 fields and 4 of them I would call software. Another concept is the one of systemic competitiveness. Come to that in just a moment. And what we're also focusing on is the distribution of roles, the interaction between government and private sector. What are the roles? What is the mechanisms for dialogue, and how does cooperation between the two work? And then, at the end, you always talk about service systems, systems that deliver services to enterprises. And there are different modes of coordination of these systems. Yeah? Traditionally, we think about hierarchy, organization, in the public sector especially. Then, for many years, we were talking about markets. And then there is a third one, and all the people that work in business membership organizations would be working in networks. So it's the 3 mechanisms of coordination, hierarchy, market, networks. None of them in the real world would be able to really deliver what we want alone. It will always be a mixture between these 3 things, these 3 modes of coordination, and you would always have to find a good balance of these 3. Looking into issues like governance, financing, and delivery. All this we would apply to a cluster approach. Then one sentence about the systemic competitiveness. The industrial competitiveness is not just the result of your heroic actions as an individual enterprise. And it is not just the result of somebody changing a policy. It is, in practice, the result of a rather complex interaction between the different layers, the different levels. So you need interaction, learning, collaboration, and also a little bit of a competitive pressure at the micro level, the enterprise level. You need a supporting environment of suppliers and production-oriented services, and you need a national system of norms, rules, and institutions that define the incentives which shape the behavior of your enterprises. So you are working on these 4 levels. Meta level, as I said, the value orientation, the cultural things. Macro level, the stable macroeconomic, political, and juridical framework. And now the meso level, which is often forgotten, targeted policies to strengthen the competitiveness of certain sectors or regions. At the micro level, enterprises and their organizations. And we have seen in the last years a shift away in the attention from the individual enterprise towards VMOs and towards clusters. And we have heard also, I think in the morning, that one line of a challenge is how do these targeted policies come into existence, and what are the underlying dialogue processes between government and private sector that lead to the formulation of those policies. And another strain is the service strain. Services like R&D, research and development, export promotion, financing agencies, training institutions, incubators. How do they come into existence? What is